So Oscar De La Hoya did an interview recently where he said that doing big fights in Saudi is a double-edged sword, basically. You get a lot of money short term, but long term, the fighter's profile is going to suffer in the United States. America, still to this day, is quite an insular country. They don't pay as much attention to stuff that goes on abroad as, say, the average Brit does, for example. So De La Hoya might have a point that long-term the fighter's profile will suffer, but while his profile is suffering in the United States, it's actually growing in other territories around the world because these events that, for example, are being put on in Saudi Arabia are being televised in many countries worldwide. It's like music artists from America. Long term, many of them will tell you that they actually make more money from touring outside of America than they do inside America. Obviously, a music artist has got generally a much longer career than a professional boxer, but it's possible that the same principle might apply, especially for fighters on DAZN because DAZN is a global platform. Boxing is a global sport. Maybe De La Hoya's thinking is too myopic. Maybe he's not seeing the big picture. America has been the epicenter of professional boxing for so many decades. But things are changing. The world is changing. There are new power players now on the geopolitical stage. It's very clear to me, and many other people have pointed this out, some veteran boxing journalists and what have you, that the Middle East, Saudi Arabia specifically, is quickly becoming the 21st century equivalent of Las Vegas in terms of professional boxing. Because back in the 80s and 90s, the Vegas casinos were paying out enormous sums of money, site fees, to secure these big fights. And that's what the Saudis are doing now. Now, some people will say, oh, it's different. And they'll start talking about the nature of Saudi society and their critiques of it. Without getting into that too deeply, you do realize that Las Vegas was basically founded by the mob, don't you? It's mob money that grew that town. Not good old apple pie, law-abiding citizens, mobsters. That place was mob central for decades. When they were putting on all the big fights and stuff like that, mob money was behind a lot of that. Most of it even. So again, without getting too deep into it, if we just look at things objectively, however we feel about the way we got to this position, Saudi involvement in boxing is clearly for the good of the sport. These fights and these shows simply would not be happening without the Saudis. And I've been saying this from the very start. There were a lot of people who are claiming that the fights are not going to happen because of the Saudis. Some of those people, not all of them, but a large percentage of them, were just trying to deflect blame away from Tyson Fury because Fury avoided the Usyk fight for about 2 years. And rather than have him take all the blame, justifiably, the Fury fans were looking for ways to spread the blame around. Oh, let's blame other heavyweights. They're not fighting each other. They're waiting for this big Saudi payday and they're not. No. They were never fighting each other even before the Saudis were on the scene to the extent that boxing fans wanted them to. If the Saudis hadn't got involved in boxing, I've got no doubt in my mind that Usyk versus Fury wouldn't be happening. Certainly not now. Fury would be milking that belt for even longer, facilitated by Mauricio Sulaiman, fighting less than stellar opposition, getting a mandatory once every 2 years. He's fighting Usyk now for a combination of factors. In my view, 1, because of the pressure from the fans. I'll talk about this in a separate video. 2, because he saw vulnerability in the Usyk-Dubois fight. And 3, because of the enormous check that the Saudis have placed in front of him. Without that enormous check, in my view, this fight wouldn't be happening because Fury, again, would just be milking the WBC belt. That card that we just saw on December 23rd, that would never have happened without Saudi involvement. So whatever you think about the Saudis themselves, objectively speaking, their involvement in professional boxing is good. People talk about the atmosphere at the Saudi shows is dead. Well, I would rather see a fight happen with a dead atmosphere than the fight not happen at all. I mean, these same people weren't complaining to this extent when fights were happening during the global shutdown, when there was no crowds at all. Where were their complaints then? But they're complaining now. Like, come on. I've seen people in the comments saying that they're literally not going to watch any of the Saudi shows because of the crowd, because it's so dead. I'm like, what? So you didn't watch the shows during the shutdown? You did. Okay, so what's the double standard about? No. Saudi involvement has been the best thing that's happened to professional boxing for a very long time, objectively speaking, because a tree is known by its fruits. Look at what we've got from the Saudi involvement so far. Undisputed, these mega cards, Beterbiev versus Bivol, looks like it's going to get done. A load of upsets, etc., etc. So let's enjoy it while it's here, because there may come a point in future when the Saudis start to tighten the purse strings. But for now, you've got the Saudis with incredibly deep pockets as deep as the oil wells in their country, basically playing fantasy boxing. Prince Turki said he wanted to match Dimitri Bivol against Jayar Pataya. I mean, that's where he's at with it. He's just imagining the tastiest matchups in his mind and saying, okay, let me throw a load of money at these guys and let's do it. He likes the idea of a Matchroom versus Queensberry show, Eddie versus Frank. As long as AJ beats Ngannou, it would seem that Prince Turki wants to have AJ fight the winner of Usyk Fury right away, whereby the loser of Usyk Fury might step aside and allow the winner to fight AJ first, and then he gets a shot at the winner of that. So the fights that boxing fans want to see are being expedited by Saudi involvement. And going back to what I said earlier on, boxing is a global sport. DAZN is a global broadcaster. Let's say Devin Haney were to fight Ryan Garcia in Saudi Arabia. Their fans in the United States might not be as engaged, but they may win new fans in other countries around the world. It happens. I mean, look at Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao's from the Philippines. When he fights in the Philippines, huge crowds. But he based himself in the United States for many years, and he eventually drew huge crowds there as well. Muhammad Ali, he's probably the best example. Yeah, he was drawing big crowds in his home country, the United States, but he became such a global star, such a global icon, that he was filling out arenas in Manila, in the Congo, in Africa, etc., etc. In fact, the 1970s was a period which is quite similar to today in terms of boxing being more international and not so confined to particular countries. Ali was doing like a world tour. Even George Foreman. George Foreman won the heavyweight title against Joe Frazier. That's two American fighters. Do you know where that fight was? It was in Kingston, Jamaica. Foreman defended his title in Venezuela. And of course, famously, he defended it unsuccessfully against Muhammad Ali in Africa. What's wrong with boxing being global, Oscar? That's what I would ask him. You're old enough to remember a lot of the stuff I just talked about. Did fighting abroad hurt Muhammad Ali's profile, or did it actually make it bigger? That's a rhetorical question, obviously, because we all know the answer. So you got to think bigger. That's my view. Give me your view in the comment section below. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.